AA60D K6YYL.
K6YYL, good morning, Kim.
Good morning, Will. I thought I would ask you some questions here. How to introduce people to ham radio, tips and advice.
Okay, Kim, AA6DD for ID purposes. Well, of course, one of the things you want to say often and over again is that it's fun. The reason you want to do ham radio, it is fun. It has so many amazing things you can do. And but then you want to reiterate, and each one of them are fun to do. And so you need to start off with that and have it in the back of your mind that you want to repeat that every so often as you explain the different aspects of ham radio and what it is required to get going. Go ahead.
Okay, AA60D K6YYL. So, what would be the best thing after somebody gets their license? Like, let's say they're starting out as a technician.
Well, we first have to explain to a total neophyte that there are licenses required. There's 3 different license levels. Each one requires a written exam. All the questions are published on the web and available that will be in the exam. And then you will find a volunteer examiner group that can give you the test. And also there are oftentimes free courses that you can go take by your local amateur radio club or Red Cross that will prep you for the test. So there's many ways to get there. One of the best ways is through actually going to a class. That way you're motivated by the other students. And radio students are all ages. When I taught adult education classes for ham radio at Cerritos College for many decades, I had students from 10 years old to 90-year-old all in the same class. But and so you have certain camaraderie that helps you acquire the test. Go ahead.
Right. And the test is multiple choice, so that's really nice. And go ahead.
Okay, Kim, AA6DD for ID purposes. Now, once you achieve the tech license, you have here again, tremendous amount of privileges on many ham bands. We have what we're talking on right now is 50.300 FM simplex. I'm running a couple hundred watts. You're running about 100 watts. But as a technician right here on this VHF frequency, you can run up to 1,500 watts out as a technician. And that gives you, 100-mile range or more quite easily, even with 100 watts simplex with a good antenna system. So when you do ham radio, you not only want some good quality radios with a reasonable power level, but you want to put some of the money and effort into your antennas as well. And so you should explain that that's the case. One of the things that I think so many hams do, I've heard Gordon West do this. I'll actually name somebody. Gordon knows me, and he knows my opinion. And too often, he'll tell his students, "Oh, just get a Baofeng, $30 HT." Well, I disagree with good old Gordon, and he knows it. No, that's the worst thing you can tell a student to do, because you're all of a sudden you're only on a repeater. You really have no simplex range. You have no antenna you've put up yet or not. Fine, they can go buy that, and they don't know how to program the thing. They'll have to take it to some other ham to put it on a computer and program it up, and then they get on the local repeater and find they're now ready for some emergency communications. But that's a dead end. You know, that doesn't get you anywhere. That doesn't give you 1/10,000th of the capacity of what ham radio has to offer. Go ahead.
AA60D K6YYL. Yes, and I like your choices for radios for beginners, and you were saying that over time, you know, it's going to be a great investment, and a small handheld is going to be kind of a deterrent in the long run, and it's better to save up some money and get something that's going to be there for a decade or more.
Exactly. So what I would recommend first is a radio like the Yaesu FT891, which gives you 100 watts out, 6 meters to 160 meters, all these different ham bands, all modes, totally general coverage receive. So the whole aspect of even shortwave listening you can now listen to. And then put up decent antennas for that. Now, such a radio is, you can get coupons when it's less than $700. But even if you're paying the $700 for such a radio, and a lot of neophytes, well, that's a lot of money. Well, ham radio equipment you use for years and years and years. So even if you just prorate it for 10 years of use, you're talking about $70 a year. I mean, that's ham radio is cheap, you know. But you got to realize that, you know, trying the upfront cost may be a little bit of something, but then you prorate how long you're going to be using this. You can put up a simple antenna like the high gain AV620 that covers 6 meters to 20 meters, a nice vertical. Try to get it up in the air at least 10 meters. If you can do that, that's, you know, 34, 35 feet. And you have tremendous simplex range as well as DX range worldwide on the different ham bands. And then on lower bands such as 40 and 80 meters, you put up dipoles. And that's just a wire antenna you can build up yourself. You buy the coax and buy some insulators and buy the wire and solder it all together and get it up in the air. And fine, you're going to have to buy the materials. But if you put all that together, you could buy a complete system like that for probably around $500. But here again, you prorate that for a decade or more of activity of what they're going to use it for, and it turns out to be relatively inexpensive. But now you have high quality radio, excellent antennas for performance on all these bands, and your ham radio career is off and running. K6YYL AA650D.
AA60D K6YYL. Very good. Let me grab a glass of water real quick. But go ahead and talk. And I agree. And we definitely need to start a technician off to where it's fun and enjoyable. And right now the bands are getting fantastic, but there's going to be a time where they're not so good. And a little handheld, you know, somebody's just going to not do much with that.
Yes. Well, if you want to go less expensive and more VHF only, which I don't recommend, I really think you want to introduce HF even to the technician license initially and not ghettoize them up on VHF, UHF. But if you can't get them there, then at least they should have as many different bands on VHF with a good high-quality mobile transceiver that can put out some power. There are quad-band transceivers available. Yaesu makes one. Waxon makes one. TYT makes one. And these are 50-watt radios that cover the 440 ham band. They cover 2 meters and 6 meters and 10 meters. Now, for tech, you can't do yet, but we hope to improve the privileges of tech so they can use 10-meter FM. If that goes through, then they'll be able to use 10-meter FM as well. In fact, there's somebody coming through on 29.6 FM on 10 meters.
W4 KBX, W4 KWX, W4 RBX.
So two different forward stations across the country coming through here in Southern California, with the FLIR coming up on 10 meters, which is a lot of fun. So that would, here again, that's I don't even like to have to recommend that, but it's much better than doing the HT situation. Go ahead.
AA60D K6YL, yes, and that Yaesu FT891 is a nice radio, and I think there was another one. Was it a 450? Would you recommend that one as well? I think there was a Yaesu.
I think they have dropped production on that one, but if you can find it, if you can find the Fox Tango 450 Delta used, and here again, hopefully you can find it for, somebody who will stand behind it when you buy it used and make sure it's working well for you beforehand. But here again, I don't want a neophyte to even buy used stuff normally, because if something happens, some of this older stuff, you just can't get it repaired. There's no way to repair the thing. The Yaesu FT891, one of the things that Yaesu has done that I really think is wonderful is they're now they're warranting their radios for 3 years, not 3 months, 3 years, and they're doing this to compete against the Chinese type radios. And you need to factor that in when you're looking at a used piece of equipment. Go ahead.
Right, AA60D K6YYL. Very good, very good. So we talked about some radios and some antennas, and hopefully we'll get more people interested in the hobby. And one thing we don't want to do is have privileges for technicians go down for like 10 watts or an entry level, I should say, going down for 10 watts, because that's just going to, like you said, cause failure. People are not going to be interested.
Yeah, one of the things that somebody who doesn't go back as far as me is concerned, we had failures. The novice license, about half the novices never upgraded, and that's because there wasn't enough time to upgrade, and so we kept increasing it to 2 years, and then eventually we finally increased it so you could renew the thing. But we should have never made it that short in the first place. But let me give you an example of the failure rate, even at 75 watts of CW. A lot of novices never even got on the band. The equipment was quite expensive back then. But of those who did get on, the failure rate was about 50%. This is something I've never told anybody, but my brother, who was a couple of years younger than me, there was 5 of us in our group. He was in high school and I was in college. We got our novices all together. my brother was never successful in getting on the air. I mean, he bought a transmitter and a receiver and a high gain vertical that was ground mounted, and he never made a QSO. He tried on CW to make a QSO, but he was never successful. Part of it is because people oftentimes don't know you need a real counterpoise if you're putting something on the ground. And he didn't have you grounded something, but what does that mean? He didn't understand that. I didn't understand that at the time. And so he left ham radio and has never come back. and he's an old man like I am now. Well, it's terrible. It's terrible. I mean, and our failure, and I consider that our failure rate. That's why we want real privileges with decent power level, 100, 200 watts on HF, so you're successful. Even when propagation is poor, I know we can all talk about the time. I can talk about the time I had 50 milliwatts, and I worked Florida on 6 meters from coast to coast. Well, that's once in a lifetime situation. You can't create a license structure based on that. You have to create a license structure based on the worst situation, the bottom of the sunspot cycle, and still be successful. K6YYL, AA6DD.
AA60D, K6YYL, yeah, and yeah, you said privileges with decent power for sure, because we don't want somebody just giving up, if they have, such, little power and just not getting out anywhere in the doldrums, and we're going to lose those hams that could have been great and had a great time.
Yeah, well, not everybody has a stick-to-itiveness that you had there, Kim. Because I remember when you first got on, you worked a few sporadic key openings with your dipole, not very high off the roof, there in Claremont, and worked some Oregon and Washington stations. But a lot of people would have given up, and of course you didn't. So the rest is history. Go ahead.
AA60D, K6YYL, yeah, and if that's the only way you can start out, then do so. But yeah, it would be better to get, like Will said, the AV 620 by High Gain is a great choice.
Yeah, but the guy on the web, what does he call himself? His Augies. Even he recommends that antenna. Go ahead.
Okay, very good. And so we won't make it too much longer, but what else would you kind of let new hams know, or somebody who's potentially getting interested in amateur radio?
Yeah, well, here again, let's talk about all the fun things there is to do in ham radio. There's hams that bounce signals off the moon. There's hams that transmit through satellites all the time. We have our own organization, AMSET, that designs and builds satellites, and we get free rides into outer space for our satellites, and we get them up there. We have the entire HF spectrum, a number of very choice little pieces of spectrum that allow us to bounce our signal around the world. And watch, and when we have these VHF frequencies, and we have repeaters on mountaintops that allow us to have much greater range in all over our community with 50 miles of a range all the time through the repeaters on a number of VHF and UHF frequencies. It just is an endless variety, a smorgasbord of things to do that are all fun. Go ahead.
Okay, and we love CPers, and we would love them to, get their amateur radio license. And what would you say, because I used to be on the CB, what would you say to somebody who may be a CBer right now and what would you say to try to encourage them to go ahead and upgrade, get the 10-meter, the technician class license, and then hopefully they'll upgrade to general, and then hopefully they'll go to the extra class license. But what would you say to them to get them to be more encouraged to come over to amateur radio and give that a try?
Well, I would say something interesting there, Kim, is the very fact that Channel 38CB has all these men and women, but mainly men, talking there on sideband and doing a hobby, making CB into a hobby. And the vast majority of them are using pieces of ham radio equipment there. They're using, the most popular thing there is an Icom 7300. Well, that's kind of a failure somehow. Why aren't these guys upgraded to ham radio? Well, if you look at the test we have today, it's ridiculously difficult. Now, I know there's a few talented youngsters that I've helped, 10-year-old young ladies get their license, but they were raised around it invariably, and they're gifted beyond belief. Okay, but we can't populate ham radio with these extremely gifted people. We need many more young people who have dropped by the wayside because of that test. I know of a number of young ladies that went on to try to interest in ham radio. I'm talking about grammar school students. Went on the web, looked at the test, went over it, studied, and they could never pass the one on the practice one, and so they left ham radio. I don't think they'll ever come back. That test for an entry-level test is obscene. I can't put it any other way than that. That is why it's so vital that we get that docket through the FCC, get a docket get the docket out for the enhancement of the technician license, and the rewriting of that exam to a real entry-level exam. It's absolutely vital for the future of amateur radio and for the future of hundreds of thousands of young people to get into ham radio and to get some of these older guys off of 11 meters and on the ham radio as well. So most of those guys are old enough that they should, go and do the study and they could pass. But the young people need a test that's designed for them so that they can pass at least an 80% rate. You can tell I'm passionate about this, and that's what needs to come to fruition and get done. K6YYL, A6DD.
AA60D, K6YYL. Yeah, exactly. And the test needs to be rewritten for sure. And we won't name names, but the director that emailed me back was mentioning about, there's going to be splatter, if we don't educate the hams and this and that. But it's like you said, you just need to rewrite the test, and have the questions and talk about AGC and all that, so they're not splattering or whatever, everything like that. He was making it so black and white and very narrow thinking about the well, anyway, go ahead.
K6YYL, A6DD. Oh, absolutely. The fact is, modern equipment is easy to use, relatively easy. You have to study the manual, you have to practice a little bit, but you can't get in trouble with modern equipment hardly. You have a nice digital readout to tell you where you're at. You have automatic linearity control, as long as you go to put the meter on ALC and then adjust your mic until it stays down in the green area, not into the red area, you're good to go. You're not going to be splattering. Now, will young people make mistakes? Yes. I made mistakes as a novice. All right? I plugged in the wrong crystal, an 80-meter crystal, was on 40 meters, and I put out a signal above the band. And I got an FCC notice from a monitoring station in Alaska, my greatest DX. And so I had to write a letter, Maya Copa, won't do that again. So none of these young people are going to make as big a mistake as I did. Go ahead.
Yeah, and that was decades ago, and somebody will probably not have that radio as their first radio, because like you said, there's modern equipment out there now that is just amazing, and it's very easy. Like the 7300, the Icom 7300 is so easy to use, really.
Yeah, well, that would be another one we would recommend. Now, fine, it's approaching, it's around just under $1,000 these days, I guess, $999. But it's a superb radio, 100 watts, 163 to 6 meters, all modes, nice spectrum display on it so you see where you're at. And yeah, it's very straightforward to use. You still would have to read the manual for putting in repeaters or something, but for your just straight operation, it's very analog the way it works. It'd be another excellent choice for anybody. And here again, you say you're going to use this for a decade easily a decade. And so you're talking about $100 a year is what it costs to do this in ham radio. So you always want to prorate it when you're talking to people so they realize that, well, yeah, the upfront cost is kind of high, but, look how long I can use it and have so much fun and just an adventure that's unbelievable.
Right, AA60D, K6YYL, yeah, and that touchscreen is so nice on that Icom 7300. It's really easy, and I really enjoy it when I'm using it. And right now I'm on my Kenwood 480HX here, which I really love. Anyway, so what else might you say to somebody who's a CBer? What would you say? Come on over, get your license, and you may not understand everything. Maybe you might actually just remember and memorize an answer, but later on you may actually, through doing, actually learn. I think that's how you learn better anyway, is you learn through doing. And once you get your license and you're on the air, it is just that it's learning by doing.
Roger, Kim. You want to an older adult has enough background that they can sit there and memorize all these questions that are on the pool now. And yeah, there's some real sweat equity required to do that, but they can be successful and they can get their license and then really enjoy ham radio. Now, some of the people that are on 11 meters on sideband, they are hams. They're technicians. They're down there on 11 meters working DX because they don't have a band lower than that. Once we improve the tech's privileges so they have 15 meters and 40 meters and 80 meters, they'll be down on 15 all the time. That again, we need to make ham radio compete in the real world for people getting on and enjoying the hobby. Go ahead.
Exactly, yeah, and we'd love to have them, the technicians have better privileges, and eventually, hopefully, that will go through. But we would hope also that CBers would decide to get their technician or general, up through, you have to pass all of them, obviously, tech, and then the general, and then the extra. We hope that, we'd encourage some more CBers who are not hams already. We just hope that we get more people, and it's just all great. Like you said, it's one big family.
K6YYL, A6DD. That's all correct, Kim. So you, like I say, I'm compassionate, absolutely, driven to make this available to our younger people in grammar school and middle school, there's the phone ringing. Go ahead, Kim, and I'll see what this is. Probably an ad.
Okay, AA60D K6YL. Well, we won't keep it much longer because it's already over 30 minutes of recording here, and we don't want to lose audience because sometimes people just don't want to listen for a long time. So, and I can understand that. Hopefully they'll listen to this, but you never know. Anyway, we can just finish up from here if you want, and make another video about another topic another time, but I think we can probably finish this one up here.
Okay, Kim. Well, let me put my phone number on here. See, I am an old stick in the mud here. I don't do email, so anybody wants to talk to me about all this wonderful subject matter, my phone number is 951 area code 776-0315. I repeat, 951-776-0315. And just let it ring and ring and ring. It's an old-fashioned phone for me to get in here. I'm an old slow person. Anyway, been fun, Kim, as always. K6YYL, AA6DD.
All right, thank you very much. Well, it's been a pleasure, and thank you again, AA60D K6YYL.